Some of us didn't grow up feeling chosen. We grew up feeling tolerated, overlooked, or like we had to earn our place. When you're the good child, you end up getting ignored. You didn't need constant attention because there was nothing to worry about when it came to you. You always felt like you were second, third, or fourth, never the favorite, never anyone's priority. You might have been the only boy or girl in groups, so you felt outcasted a lot. You played alone because you had different interests, or you were excluded for your protection. You learned early that your needs didn't matter. Instability and inconsistency shaped everything. You might have switched schools a lot because you were constantly moving or for reasons out of your control. That led to you losing friends, familiarity, safety, identity anchors. You learn not to get too attached because it might not last. That nothing is stable. And being visibly different made things even harder. You felt like you didn't fully belong anywhere. You might have scanned for people who made sense to your nervous system, gravitating towards other kids who also lived in the in-between. Same complexion or hair type, or personality traits like shy or sensitive. You might have grown up emotionally neglected in an unsafe environment. Maybe your parent was unavailable, always working, always stressed, completely disconnected. You were either left alone or left with someone who made you feel alone. Someone who was unable to show love, someone who was abusive. You learned early not to add to the stress, to self-soothe instead. You learned to shrink and survive. You might have gone through situations that were filled with confusion, betrayal, or lack of truth. You were lied to, or you were never given an explanation for things that were happening. So you learned truth isn't safe and adults control reality. Maybe you experienced abandonment early, being left at someone's house after you fell asleep, only to wake up and realize your mom is gone. Or maybe you were just dropped off at a birthday party with a bunch of people you didn't know until they came back to get you. It might not seem like a big deal. It probably was never intended to harm you. But as a child, your nervous system learned that people leave without warning. Or maybe you experienced social wounds. You were bullied or rejected for being different, quiet, or sensitive. People attacked your appearance. They came at the color of your skin, the shape of your eyes, your birthmarks, or how much hair you did or didn't have on your body. When you're in identity formation stages, insults burrow deep inside you. So you learned being visible wasn't safe. Growing up, I was the good child, the quiet one, the one nobody had to worry about. And because I wasn't causing problems, I didn't get much attention. My aunt would say it almost like a compliment. Your mom never had to worry about you. But what that actually meant for me as a child was I was alone, a lot. I read by myself, drew by myself, played with my dolls by myself, watched TV by myself. Not because I didn't want connection. I desperately wanted it. But I learned early that needing too much wasn't safe. So I became self-sufficient before I was old enough to understand what that was costing me. I was the only girl with 3 brothers. And my stepfather at the time had rules for me that my brothers didn't have. I couldn't always play outside with them and our friends because they were boys. I was young and I didn't think about things like that, so I had no idea why. I just knew I was being left out again. I thought I was being picked on. I didn't understand it was protection. And honestly, even understanding it now doesn't take away how it felt back then. To watch from the window while everyone else played. We moved constantly. I started kindergarten at one school and then finished the year at another. New school in first grade, moved a couple months into third grade. New school in fifth grade. Then sixth grade, we moved to a completely different state. We stayed with my grandma, new school again. Then we got our own place, new school in seventh grade. Then we moved back to our home state, another new school. Except this time I recognized some faces from elementary school, which was the closest thing to stability I had felt in years. Every single time I had to start over. New hallways, new lunch tables, new social dynamics to read. And I became very good at reading them fast. I'd scan for kids who felt familiar, girls who looked a little like me, biracial or foreign looking, a little different, a little in between. I didn't have the language for it back then, but I was looking for people whose nervous system made sense to mine. People who also knew what it felt like to not fully belong anywhere. And even when I found them, I never fully relaxed because I'd already learned this might not last. That's the kind of wound I'm talking about. Not one dramatic moment, The accumulation of a childhood that kept teaching me the same lesson over and over again. Don't get too comfortable. People leave. Things change. You're on your own. These type of experiences form core beliefs within your being. Beliefs like, I don't belong. I have to earn love. My presence is too much or unsafe. Don't rely on people. You may have become hyper aware of energy, constantly reading people, facial expressions, body language. Whenever you feel accepted, you attach deeply, and you probably minimize your needs for that person. You might struggle to relax and self-soothe when your nervous system is activated. This isn't dysfunction. This is adaptation. Just because your caregiver is there physically doesn't mean they're emotionally present. It becomes neglect when they consistently fail to meet your basic emotional or safety needs. Not giving you all the facts, hiding things from you, refusing to talk to you like you're a person with real feelings, like your experience doesn't need to be explained, or being surrounded by conflict and misattunement, like recurring arguments, harsh words, or constantly being misunderstood. Losing your primary support system, like getting kicked out or taken away. That's sudden separation. These are significant events that destroy trust, leading to betrayal or trauma. And when this becomes a pattern, it doesn't just hurt in the moment. It creates what's called a core attachment rupture, a disruption in the connection between two people, usually a caregiver and a child. This can also happen in adult romantic relationships. It's a moment when core needs for safety, trust, and connection aren't met, leading to feelings of abandonment, anger, or confusion. When you aren't prepared for these ruptures, attachment trauma or injuries occur. Children may start disengaging, become controlling, or struggle with emotional regulation. Adults may struggle to trust, fear being left, or have intense reactions to things that might seem small. When a person feels unsafe in relationships, chronic stress hormones like cortisol and adrenaline are released, which affects your physical and mental health. These type of wounds can turn you into someone who feels cold, sarcastic, detached, with an I don't care attitude. Not because you're mean, but because you want to protect yourself. And here's the thing about attachment wounds. They don't just stay in childhood. They follow you. They show up in your adult relationships in ways you might not even recognize as connected to this. They show up when someone doesn't text you back fast enough and your whole nervous system goes into panic mode. Not because the text matters that much, but because your body remembers what it felt like when people disappeared without warning. They show up when you're doing everything for someone who's doing the bare minimum for you. Overfunctioning, taking care of them, making yourself indispensable. Because somewhere deep down, you learn that love has to be earned. And if you stop earning it, it might leave. They show up when you shrink yourself to keep the peace. When you're unhappy, but you don't say anything because conflict feels dangerous. Because you learned early that expressing a need either created more stress or got you nothing at all. They show up when you end things before someone can leave you first. When you self-sabotage right when something good is actually happening. When someone who is genuinely kind and consistent feels suspicious to you, like it's too easy, like you're waiting for the catch. I resonate with that personally. I pushed away people who were actually good for me because receiving love that felt stable and easy didn't feel real. It felt like something I had to prepare to lose. So I ended things before they could end it first. That doesn't mean you're broken or toxic or unlovable. That's not a character flaw. That's an attachment wound running the show. And on the flip side, I spent years in relationships where I was doing way too much for people who were doing far too little. Overfunctioning, shrinking, staying quiet when I wasn't happy because I didn't want to deal with the conflict or I didn't want to be alone. I was operating from a blueprint for love that was incomplete and I didn't even know it. It wasn't until I did the real work, the emotional work, the inner work, that I was finally able to receive love that was actually good for me. Consistent love. Love that didn't require me to earn it or prepare for it disappearing. That is an attachment wound that finally started to heal. And somewhere in the middle of all that, the overfunctioning, the shrinking, the pushing people away, I started to realize something. The truth is, when you get repeatedly attacked just for existing, it's because you have something someone else wants. You're intelligent, you're attractive, you're expressive, you're emotionally aware, you're intuitive, you're ambitious, you're independent. Those traits can trigger people who feel inferior, abandoned, rejected, behind, or haven't healed. And instead of rising to meet you, they try to shrink you and bring you down with them. But here's the thing, you're not perfect, and you know you're not perfect, but you are potent. And potent energy activates unresolved wounds in others. You were never hard to love. You were just easy to overlook in environments that didn't know how to love properly. And I want to zoom out for a second, because this is one of the most quietly painful parts of carrying these wounds into your relationship with love, trust, and inner guidance. When you grew up learning that love is conditional, that you have to earn it, that it disappears without warning, that the people who are supposed to choose you sometimes didn't, it becomes really hard to receive a love that's steady and unconditional. You can understand the concepts, you can want to believe you're supported, guided, or deeply loved, but somewhere underneath that, there's still a part of you waiting for it to be taken away, waiting to do something wrong enough that the support disappears. And that's not a mindset problem. That's a wound showing up in how you relate to love itself. Because real love, whether you call it God, source, the universe, inner guidance, whatever, isn't unstable. It isn't inconsistent. It isn't the parent who didn't show up. It isn't the person who left without explanation. It isn't the voice that made you feel like you were too much or not enough. It's the part of life that stayed, the part of you that kept going, the quiet presence that carried you through moments you didn't understand at the time. Learning to receive love, love that doesn't require you to earn it or shrink yourself, that's deep inner work. Because you can't fully open to that kind of support if you're still operating from the belief that love always comes with conditions. Healing your attachment wounds is choosing to relate to love differently, slowly and imperfectly. To believe that you're safe to fully be seen, that you don't have to perform, protect, or disappear to be supported. That's what this journey is really about. You can't force trauma out of your body. It won't leave by reliving every moment, or forgiving harder, or fixing yourself. It heals through safety, truth, and integration. Your body needs consistency, gentleness, clear boundaries, relationships that don't require self-betrayal, and space to feel without being overwhelmed. In real life, healing looks like noticing patterns, choosing differently, having compassion for your younger self, and setting boundaries. And if you're trying to build that in your day-to-day life, I actually created a free guide that helps you stay grounded and structured while you're healing. I'll link it below. Whenever I notice myself wanting to react the way I used to, I pause, I take a few deep breaths, and I remind myself, this isn't who I am anymore. I'm safe. This will pass. And before I know it, the emotion subsides, and a sense of peace washes over me. I become calm. You weren't abandoned because you were unlovable. You dealt with inconsistency while being sensitive. Kids need predictability, explanation, reassurance, and emotional availability. You didn't get enough of that, so you became exceptionally good at reading the room instead. You weren't surrounded by bad things because something was wrong with you. You were surrounded by unstable, wounded people because you had no choice. You adapted because you were intelligent. You survived because you were perceptive. You could have turned bitter. You could have become chaotic. You could have mirrored the dysfunction, but you didn't. You're choosing reflection. You're choosing accountability. You're choosing boundaries. You're choosing compassion. You're choosing growth. You're choosing love. You're choosing peace. That says everything. You're not here to repeat what hurt you. You're here to become someone who finally feels safe to themselves. And a lot of what you're still carrying didn't start with you. But here's something I want you to sit with for a second. The parent who was emotionally unavailable, they probably had a parent who was emotionally unavailable too. The instability, the silence, the inability to show love, those things were handed down, not as gifts, as wounds that never got treated. My mom was doing the best she could with what she had. She was working constantly, visibly stressed, carrying things in her body that she never talked about. When she was home, she was exhausted. And I didn't understand that as a child. All I knew was that she wasn't really there. But as an adult, I started to see it differently. She was a child once. She also had needs that weren't met. She also learned to survive in ways that probably didn't serve her or us. That doesn't make what happened okay. It doesn't mean you have to minimize your experience or rush to forgive anyone. It just means the story is bigger than you knew. Because here's what happens when wounds don't get healed. They get passed down. Not always intentionally, not always obviously, but they show up in the way we parent, the way we love, the way we handle conflict, the way we respond when someone needs something from us emotionally. And at some point, somebody in the line has to decide, this stops with me. That's not a small decision. That's actually one of the hardest things a person can do. To break a pattern they were raised inside of. To choose differently when everything in you was wired to repeat. We're gonna go much deeper on that in the next video. But I want you to start sitting with this question now. What did you inherit that was never yours to carry? You don't have to erase your past to be free from it. You just have to stop letting it decide what you tolerate. Until next time, take care of your mind, your body, and your spirit, and stay open to the guidance within you.